welcome to the 49th Hong Kong French Film Festival. And today we've got the Q&A session of the film Women. And with us today is the two directors, Yann Arthus-Bertrand, who is coming back into screen. There he is. Okay, there we go. And we're live. With a special guest as well. Oh, special guest.
Bonjour Hong Kong. Voilà.
There we go. Yes, hi everyone.
C'est les femmes de
Right
demain.
here in Paris.
Allez, c'est bon. Merci. J'en ai 4 à la maison.
Yeah, next generation of women right there. Yes, there's Yann Arthus-Bertrand and Anastasia Mikova, so the two directors of the film Women. And right next to me is Rhea Mogul, a freelance journalist who specializes in gender studies and women issues. And just a short intro of our two directors, Yann Arthus-Bertrand is a French film director who has published before a book called La Terre vue du ciel, and he has worked on multiple productions regarding environmental issues. And he is working with Anastasia Mikova this year on the film Women, and Anastasia Mikova is a film director and a journalist who specializes in humanist topics. And so let us kick off as to why this Women film came about and how this project came to be. How did you two start working on this film? I'll pass that to you two now.
Yann, you want to start or you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Please let us know how both of you came to, start this project.
Okay. So we previously, before we did this last film, Woman, we worked with Yann on another project, which was what we called Human. And maybe some of the people who are joining us today have seen it because it has been seen by more than 100 million people worldwide, I think. And the whole idea of that film was quite similar in the way that it was already based on human testimonies. But there were not only women, there were men, women, children, really everyone was concerned. And I did a lot of interviews of that previous film. And there was something that really struck me while we were filming. It was the difference between the approach between men and women. When we would come to a country and, explain our project and what we were doing, men would be really happy to share their stories. They would come to us and say, oh my God, you're making a film, you know who I am. I would like, to tell you what I've been through, etc. Whereas women would first be more like suspicious, why are you doing this? Why are you asking all of these intimate questions, etc. But once they were in front of the camera, many of them, and I'm not talking only about Western countries, really like in the small village of Bangladesh, I've experienced that. It was as if they have been waiting for this their whole life, and as if everything they have kept inside for so many years, and some of them, forever, could finally be released. And I could physically feel that, liberation. And it was very impressive to see that change, because as you were saying, I'm a journalist and I have been doing this kind of interviews for the last 15 years maybe. And 15 years ago, the situation was not at all like that. In some countries it was impossible to find a woman ready to talk in front of the camera and to share those kind of intimate stories. And so we discussed it with Yann once we finished Human, which was such a huge already project, such an important project. And we thought, like, what could we do next? And actually it was like obvious to us that it was the right timing for women to talk. And it's not even us, I would say, who chose to make this film. It was more like women who made us understand that the moment had come, and it was needed, kind of. And so we felt that women needed a window, and so we've created that window for them. And maybe Yann can explain also his feeling about that.
I think we're having some technical difficulties maybe on his side. His connection might be a little bit unstable, but we'll still continue the questioning. Maybe he can join us as and when the connection resumes. But first and foremost, congratulations on making such a powerful and such a beautiful film. I think everyone could see just exactly what you spoke about, that vulnerability and that raw emotion, and it must have been really something to get these women to open up on camera in a studio outside of their regular setting. So which leads me to my next question, actually. You interviewed collectively about 2,000 women from more than 50 countries across the globe, which is really something. How long did this process take, and how did you decide which women to speak to and which women to feature in your film?
So you have to understand that it's not just the two of us, right? With Yann, who did these 2,000 interviews. If not, it would take us 10 years or more even. And we actually had 5 journalists, incredible journalists, who worked with us for the 2 years of shootings, because on overall the production lasted for more than 4 years. So there was 1 year of preparation, really like discussing with Yann, where should we go, what questions should we ask, making some tests where I would go just myself and make some first interviews, you know, because you have to understand that the way we work is very different from like classic documentaries, you know. Generally, you write your ideas down and you have like all that scenario, and then you go and you just like, follow that path. For us, it's very different. We have ideas of what we want to say. We have questions in mind. We have topics in mind, but we really, really rely on people. And in this case, especially on women. And we are really open to what they share. And so while we are working, it evolves, you know, and the scenario may change completely, or at least partially, because of the stories. And some of the stories we've heard, we could never have imagined before or write down on paper, because it's beyond, you know, sometimes reality or what you can think about. And so we had these 5 amazing journalists working with us, but then we had to kind of give them an idea of a direction where to go, because, you know, if not, with 2,000 women, it could go all directions. And so we made this guideline of topics and questions, so that we kind of try to focus and try to find the balance. I would say that with Yann, our idea was really to try and find the balance between really universal topics that, you know, everyone can talk about, like me, you, everyone who's listening today, or every woman would have something to say. I mean, you don't need a special story to share something about your work, about the relationship you have with your body, about motherhood, about sexuality and the first orgasm you have, I don't know, you know, about periods, etc., etc. You don't need a special story for that. We all have a story. And then there were some more specific topics that we as directors wanted to highlight. For example, rape as weapon of war, or genital mutilations. These are topics, even before we started working on this project, we knew that, you know, it was important for us to say, how is it possible that in 2020 there's still women who are sold just against a package of cigarettes? You know, how is it possible that there are women who are raped every day and nothing is done? So I would say that what we tried to do was to find that balance. And each time we would go to a country, we would try to kind of find all the diversity of the country and all of the different, kind of women, all ages, all social backgrounds, all, you know, the most diverse possible. And then in some cases, it would be much more specific, because happily enough, not every woman have, gone through rape. And then in that case, we would go and search for some specific stories. So I would say it was something in between.
And I think for everyone that watched the film, it was so clear how beautifully these stories and these themes just flowed into one another. You know, of course, it was a very unique documentary in the sense that it doesn't have a voiceover or it doesn't have subtitles or anything like that. And it just flowed so smoothly. I think we've lost Yann again. His connection is a little bit unstable. So perhaps we'll just keep on asking with the questions. How during the editing process, how difficult or what were the challenges to then create this really beautiful narrative, and flow from story to story, and flow from, say, one woman talking about cancer to then speaking about, as you say, her first orgasm or sexuality. What was that like?
Well, to be honest, you asked me how did we choose the women. I would say that choosing and finding the women wasn't the most difficult part. The most difficult part was really editing this whole thing. I mean, you have to understand that we did 2,000 interviews in 50, so as you were saying, different countries, and every woman said something interesting. Every single woman we have interviewed, you know, deserves to be part of this project. So once you have this, how do you choose? And then at the same time, you can't make, you know, a film which is like 12 hours long or something like that. And so just to share something with you, when we did the first editing, the film was like around 9 hours long. And we were really happy with Yann. We were like, okay, everything is there, you know, the most important stories are there, everything we want to talk about. And then we talked with our distributor, you know, for the cinema. And he was like, yeah, of course, it's great, but you can't show a film which is 9 hours long, unfortunately. So you have to, you know, go down to 2 hours. And then to do this, it took us almost 10 months. And on overall, the editing lasted almost a year, which is really, really long for a documentary. It's like exceptional, you know. And we had two amazing editors who worked with us, also women. You have to understand that 80% of people who worked on this film were women. So there was no gender parity on this film. It was like really no equality. Women were, you know, taking the lead. Happily enough, there was Yann and some cameramen who worked also because, you know, they could also share their vision. But if not, it was really like girl power. And so we worked with the two editors, and we would like try, you know, a lot of different things. And we would like, okay, so this works. And then a week again, you know, a week later, we would go back in the editing room and watch it again. But oh my God, but we cut that story and it was so good. Let's put it again. And then a journalist from the team would come and say, oh my God, don't tell me you cut that woman. She's amazing. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Let's put her again. And then it would be long, you know, too long again. So happily enough, we were chosen for the Mostra de Venise, the Venice Film Festival, to premiere the film. And so it kind of gave us, you know, that date for which we really had to finish the film. And happily enough, it happened like that, because if not, I'm afraid we would still be working on the editing, you know. But just to, in a few words, to say that for us, it was so important for all of these women to exist in a way in the project, so that we thought, okay, so there is the film, what can we do around the film to make their voices heard? And so we did this book. I can show you. It's just on my computer here. And well, it's already published in France, in Italy, in Germany, and I think it will be traveling worldwide. So I really hope that it will also go to Hong Kong. And so the whole idea with this book was to kind of use a lot of the stories we're not able to show in the film, and you know, go beyond that. And also some of the women we see just for maybe a minute or two in the film, then we had the time to show their whole portrait. And also for some of the topics which were really important, you have also statistics, you have experts, you have men also taking, you know, some stand and expressing their point of view, articles, etc. So, and now we are working on an exhibition that we hope, well, that had to be launched this year, but you know, this year is a little bit special, and we hope it will be launched next year, and it will travel all around the world, and it will also be a completely different way to show all of the women voices. So we really hope that we will be able to achieve that next year. And well, the idea is really to make all of these women heard somewhere on social media. Also, we have, you know, very active accounts where I post a lot of stuff, etc. So it's, you know, there's not only the film, it's much more, it's like a global project, let's say.
Absolutely. We can't wait to read the book and see the exhibition. I think that'd be wonderful to see. Obviously, you just mentioned you interviewed so many women. Were there any stories that particularly stuck out for you, or that you particularly feel very strongly about?
Well, you know, when you interview 2,000 women, obviously dozens of them, you know, remain with you, and most of them remain with you. And I would say it's funny, I often say that, you know, if you show me a picture of a woman I've interviewed, just in a few seconds, I'm able to tell you where I have interviewed her, what did she tell me, and what happened. when you show me a picture of people with whom I studied at the university, I will not be able to recall half of those people, you know? And it's funny because I just spent one, you know, moment with these women. Most of them, I've met them just once for maybe 2 hours because, well, you have to know that our interviews are quite long. It's not like 20 minutes or something. It's really 2, sometimes 3 hours. And so many of those women, you know, remain with you, but maybe some are more important because for what it meant, I would say for my understanding of the film and what the message of the film should be. And specifically the woman who talks first in the film, her name is Norma, the one who opened the film. For me, it was one of the strongest memories of the shooting. Oh, Yann is back. Yann,
Yes,
are you with us?
Can you hear us, Yann? We're good.
I have a very, very bad connection, so I don't think I can stay a long time with you, but Anastasia is so smart.
So whilst you are with us, we'll ask the questions.
I think you have to continue.
As Anastasia was talking, as
my
Anastasia was
connection is very bad, sorry, so I don't think it's going to work a lot. And I can see today is very sustainable. Okay, anyway.
No worries, we'll try and see where it gets us. But yes, Anastasia was talking about the casting process and all the women that was interviewed. And particularly, I think one of the things that we really noticed from this film is that the women are talking directly at someone. And I think one of the things that people will wonder is who are they talking to? And how many people is behind that camera? Are they talking alone to one person or an entire crew, especially when they're talking about those maybe traumatic experiences that they went through? So how was the entire filming process in terms of these interviews? How are they done? Yann, can you hear us?
No, sorry. I'm not with you. Tell me again. Tell again the question, please. Sorry.
So we were just wondering, you know, the women who were interviewed in the film, many of them went through quite a lot of violent experiences or traumatic experiences, but they seem to be talking directly to someone. So would that someone be you or Anastasia? And is there like a team of camera crew behind you? Or is this quite a private conversation that you're having with them?
You know, we invent this type to do interview. Perhaps Anastasia explained to you how we work. Usually when you work with a journalist, we always say to the people, don't look at the camera, look me. And me on the way how we work was completely the contrary. It means I always ask the people, because this comes for a long story. In fact, I was in a long time ago, I have a small problem with an helicopter in Africa, in Este for some days from farmers, some what we call sustainable farmer. You know, these people who are selling nothing at all. They live only on their work. And I stayed with them for 3 days, and they explained me their life. And it was completely different when they speak to me. That the way when you read something by a scientific or journalist, you know, something, you know, go in my heart. Because people was looking at me in front or looking at me in my eyes. And I knew that if I want to touch, to bring emotion on this crucial problem, we have to interview people looking at the camera. So we invent with not really, we try always, and we have done Human. Perhaps you know this movie Human is on YouTube free, and also we have done a project before with 6 billion others, and we decide to do interview people looking at the camera, and it's the way we work, because I think we bring the emotions, and people don't talk to journalists. In fact, they speak to the spectator, you know, and also it's like a mirror. These people talking to you is yourself, in fact. Is you talking, because you feel tu sens ce qu'elle ressent, and I love this kind of doing this kind of things. Je sais pas si mon anglais est bien clair ce matin. Mais anyway, you can ask Anastasia can explain when I see you the first time, and when we explained you the Human project, and how you were very surprised how it's working.
It's true that maybe I can just, to complete what Yann just said, it's funny because the first time Yann called me, and it was for Human, to say that, you know, I have this crazy idea, an incredible documentary which will be completely different from everything you've done before, etc. Like, come over, I will tell you more. And I was like, wow, great, okay, tell me more. And then he said, okay, so the idea is like you take people from all around the world, you put them in a black room with just a very strong light on their face. And then you ask them to look into the camera directly, and at the same time to forget the camera. And then you ask the most intimate question. What do you think? And I was like, okay, I've been doing, interviews for many years now. This will never work. Very bad idea. And because, imagine you have like someone who's not at all used to a camera, who most of them have never talked in front of the camera. You put him in a black room, and then you put this, that very strong light, like at the police. And then you ask all of these personal questions. How can you feel natural? How can you feel at ease? Like for me, it wasn't possible. And actually, I have to say that Yann was right and I was completely wrong. Because what happened, it was not that people would talk to the camera, is that we would take them out of their context of their everyday life, and we would put them in that space, which is out of time, out of everything. And then little by little, we would go deeper and deeper and deeper inside of them. And when I was saying that our interviews are very long, like when you take 2 hours with a person or 3 hours, you just don't go to that personal stuff like that in 2 minutes. You really take the time. And so little by little, the people and women especially would completely forget about like the journalists, about the whole thing around, etc. And they would not even talk to us. They would talk to themselves. And so even though obviously, as you were saying, it was a really small team, just a journalist and a cameraman or camera woman, and sometimes a translator when we didn't speak the language. But it wasn't even about us. It was really about creating that kind of atmosphere where the person can forget about us, can forget that it's a film, and could have this conversation with herself. And for many women, they told us, that it was the first time they kind of experienced something like that. And I think what we do is more close to like a therapy session, than a kind of, interview.
So how did you get these women to be so open and so vulnerable? Was there a set of questions, or was there one question in particular that you always started out with? How did you get them to open up so beautifully to both of you?
Yann, how did we do?
No, because you know why? Because I think the journalists we love the people. They are in confidence with us. Perhaps you can explain more than me, perhaps Anastasia. And also, I was always surprised how our women are ready to speak. Every time we go, when we began to film, and we said to the people, we're going to do a movie, we interview women. Every time we have so many women writing to us or coming to see us before, I want to speak. It was a need for the woman to speak today. So perhaps we can explain this, Anastasia, better than me.
It's true that, as I was saying in the beginning, that first of all, the most important thing, we felt that women were ready and really, in the field, making Human, we felt that women wanted to be heard. And then when we presented Human all around the world, as Yann was saying, women, we would say, we're thinking of this project about women. And then like 20, 30 women would come and say, oh my God, I want to testify, etc. So it was already really strong. We really felt that something was going on. And it was, 2 years before Me Too, 2 years before Weinstein affair, etc., etc. So it was already in the air somewhere. And then to go back to how do we create that, that trust, I would say I have questions about this every week from journalists from all around the world. Can you give me like the way to do this? There is no like magic way to do this. I think Yann is right on the thing that the most important is that actually to forget that you are a journalist, is actually to forget that you're making an interview. And even for me personally, it was a way to get there, because when we started, I was always told to kind of keep the distance, between you and the person you interview. Because, some of the stories are so hard, are so difficult that, as journalists, you are told that you have to preserve yourself. It's not, you are not able to do this, for a long time. But when you make a project like Human or like Woman, and you have a woman in front of you who shares the most intimate stuff with you and who trusts you with this, and who tells you like, you are the only person with whom I'm sharing this. How can you preserve yourself? How can you be there and like, okay, thank you so much, bye-bye, I'm going to have a beer, It can't work. It can only work if you yourself also share something from yourself and from your own experience. And how many times we with me or the other journalist or Yann, we had to stop, the interviews and to kind of just hug the person and cry together or laugh together. And, you can't preserve yourself. If not, it just doesn't work, because the person is feeling that you are, somewhere at a distance, and she will not be opening up. And so what I always told the journalists who worked with us is that you have to forget everything you were told as a journalist, and you have to be just that human being meeting another human being. And, something will happen that day or will not happen. And you just have to accept that too. And it's all about people meeting each other and opening up to each other.
Absolutely. And what you said is so correct, because as a journalist, you're always told to never become too invested in the story, never be a part of the story. You're just reporting the facts. And something that's such a personal film, obviously you're going to be so deeply invested in each and every single person's story, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is, how did this entire process change the way that you view life, or change the way that you see the world?
Very shortly, I have to say, I changed my view of the woman of my life. So very simply, on my mother, on my sister, on my wife. And I know it's so many épreuves. How we say épreuve in English, Anastasia? So many. Comment on dit une épreuve en anglais? Sorry?
Proof and evidence?
No, so many steps, so many difficult steps.
Difficulties.
So it's not very easy, I think, to be a woman in today, and to be happy with anyway. I think when I was working on this movie for 2 years, I was like a woman, because I was a woman myself, because my team was only 18 women, and all the power was taken by the woman. Suddenly I see that the movie was not me, it was all the women of my team. And listening all these women talking, you feel how move me a lot. And I think I'm a better man now. Merci, Anastasia. Thanks to this movie. And Anastasia is to you now. I changed my, vas-y, mon Anna.
No, it's true that I think it was quite a different experience for us, for me and for Yann, because obviously for me as a woman, there were a lot of things I knew, from what women would say, and a lot of things I could connect to directly, because, it's kind of mirrored, as Yann was saying, because it's really a mirror for most of the women, with your own story, even though most of the women have experienced things very different from myself, but you can completely connect with them. And for Yann, and I think most of men who saw the film came and told me, and I think it's really, for me, it's the best thing when I hear that, they told me that it kind of opened their eyes on many, many topics of women's lives. And the thing they wanted to do first is going back home and ask the women of their lives so many questions, like their mothers, their girlfriends, their daughters, etc. Because we're talking about so many taboos and things we never talk about, even between us in families, etc. And so many men told me that they wanted to open that door. And I think it's the best way to perceive this film, because it's not because it's called Woman that it only addresses, women, happily enough. And the whole idea is everything we do with Yann is about living together and trying to better understand each other. And so I think this film, even though it's about women, it's really about us, all of us living together, one half of humanity with the other half. And for me personally, just in a few words, I think it wasn't that much in changing the way I see women, it was more realizing how big the problem of violence around the world is still present. Because, even though I knew it was there, obviously, I knew there was a big problem about that. I however, thought that, my own story would be a story of many, many women of the world today, because the world is changing. And my story is that I was lucky enough to be born in a family where my parents, and especially my mother, always supported me and told me that I was the smartest, the most beautiful, the most talented, and like in a room there would be no one better than me. And so my whole life I thought that, yeah, I mean, I'm the one that can do everything, And then in my personal life, I have a husband who really supports me. I don't even know how to cook an egg, and he cooks everything. And now we just had a child, so he bears the child at night when he doesn't sleep, etc. And in my work, I have been lucky to to meet Yann and to work with Yann for the more than 12 years now. And he always supports me. He listens to my ideas. He really puts me forward, etc. So I thought that, however, many women of the world were in the same situation. And what I learned by making this film is that it's not at all the case, and that how many women have to face violence in this world today is just incredible. At a certain point, I had to tell the journalists to stop searching for the stories about violence, because we would go and meet a woman for something completely different, and she would end up talking about domestic violence or discrimination she had faced, or harassment, or all kind of violence. And if we had to proportionally show it in the film, 70% of the film would be about violence. But we decided with Yann not to do that, because happily enough, our lives as women are not only about that. But for me, the biggest revelation was really the degree of violence women have to face around the world. And this needs to change, really.
Absolutely. Do you think that's maybe inspired a project that you want to work on in the future, or inspired your future work to bring those sorts of issues to the forefront and do something about that?
Obviously, it's in all of those stories, every single story could be a film. And I briefly started to talk about the first woman, for example, who talks in the film, Norma. Maybe Yann can talk in a few words about her. We would like to make a film with her, because her story is so amazing, and just with herself and what she had been through, she already shows how difficult the life of a woman can be.
I think we've got now just under 15 minutes left, and we do have a few audience questions as well. So perhaps I'll start with them. First question. So the interviewees came as they are, or did they choose their own clothing, or did they wear clothing prepared by the crew? Were there any guidelines before, or was there complete and total freedom when they sat in front of you?
Anastasia can respond about that, because she was in charge of all the journalists and all the interviews. Please, Anastasia.
It's funny, Yann, because you remember, well, for women it happened less, but for human, some people would ask us if we have written their stories, if we have given them a text, because they were talking so perfectly and so well that people in the audience sometimes couldn't believe that they were talking with their own words. So I want to be very clear about this. We never, ever give them any text or ask them to come and be a certain way. And by the way, it's funny because some of the cameramen would tell us, oh, she's shining, maybe we should put some makeup on. And no, I mean, we're not about that. Our film is the contrary of asking people to look this way or behave that way or say this or that. We would always tell them, come as you are, as you want, and do whatever you want and say whatever you want. That's the whole idea of the film, And it's funny because for women specifically, most of them would come quite pretty and would put some makeup on, would put their, very nice clothes on. And so people would think like, oh, you told them to be like that. But no, it's just the way we are. I mean, women, for them, it was an important moment, a moment they wanted to highlight and they wanted to remember. And so what do we women generally do when it's an important moment? We put some makeup on, look at my hair, I mean, etc. So it was really all natural, but also it says something about the way society, tells a woman how to look like and how to be. And that's also a topic we addressed in the film. It's like, the relationship we have with our body and the way we look, it's something we're taught right from, very little age. And we wanted to confront people and women to that. And this is why there is a whole part we did about, this naked part. We're quite often asked about, like, why do we ask women to get naked in front of the camera, really? And the whole idea was to say, okay, we are in this world where we have this kind of very specific idea of how a woman should look like, and it's very normalized. And we have all of these incredible models looking at us from, all the advertisements, etc., but who don't really look like us, most of them. Well, now it's changing, happily enough, but it's still very present, that idea of a perfect woman with a perfect makeup, etc. And we wanted to show very different kind of women. I mean, all of us, all ages, all kind of morphology, and all behaviors. Women who had cancer, breast cancer, women who are quite old now, women who are younger, women with perfect bodies, women with all kind of bodies. I mean, what is a perfect body, by the way? It doesn't exist. And it was interesting because with Yann, I hope he will be back so he can share this story, because we worked with one of the greatest photographers, Peter Lindbergh. He was one of the greatest fashion photographers, because we were not at all used with Yann to shoot, nudity. So we were like, how do we do that? And he was really nice and kind. He accepted to do this with us. And it's funny because he worked with the most beautiful and famous women, actresses, models, etc., from all around the world. And at the end of the day, he was in tears, and he said that it was one of the most moving shootings he did, because really that nudity, they were naked in all meanings of this world, they really came as they were. And I think that's what we also feel in the film, that all of these women, they kind of, when they take off their clothes, it's like also the same in the testimonies, when you get really down there and you feel who the person really is, and you don't even look at the body anymore, you just look at the woman. And that's what we wanted to create.
Absolutely. You felt the power too, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. That scene was very, very powerful. Yeah. Next question from the audience, and I think we probably have time for one or two more, is, would you be interested in making a film about men in the future?
Well, it's funny because actually we didn't think about it at all before. But when we were working on the editing of the film, quite often we would think like, and what a man would say about this or that topic, and how men would react in that or that situation. Because, it's funny, like the public speech by men, we have it, I think maybe even too much. Yes, and but the personal stuff, the intimate stuff, we never hear about that. I mean, men talking about their first orgasm, do we know about that? Men talking about erection, men talking about being the one who had to lead in the family, the one who had to this and that, all the social stigma that also they face on their side. It's really never talked about. And so we thought, it would be interesting in this changing world we live in now to try and focus on men after we do a film on women. And we started to work on that with Yann, but then the COVID situation happens, and well, how it is now, so it becomes a little bit difficult, especially for films like ours that, you really have to travel all around the world. Unfortunately, we can't make our interviews on Zoom, it doesn't work like that. But maybe, we hope that one day the situation will get back to normal and we will be able to make some new films. And why not about men?
We're looking forward to that, definitely. And perhaps we have time for one more. And now that Yann is back, maybe he can.
Maybe for Yann.
That too, yeah.
Because my Wi-Fi is very bad, very bad.
No problem. We've all been through loads of internet connections. I think especially this year, everyone understands how it works. So no problem at all. So the last question is, contrast of color in the movie was something that was very prevalent. It was very dark during the interview and very colorful in between videos, and that creates a special tension in the film. So why did you choose to have such a contrast of color and have the interview in a dark setting, but then mix it up with these colorful shots?
I don't know if that shows myself. There was an evidence for me that my movie is life. And life is dark and sweet and full of joy. So it's a mix of everything. and mainly doing the violence is so much inside the life of women today around the world. So it was no way not to, we have to talk about that. And what we say is so powerful. And also we want to, and I'm a photographer and I love life, and I cannot explain why. I think it's an artistic way to work, and I think Anastasia and me, we are completely on the same line of this, to mix always the life, we know what is life. So I have nothing more to say about that. Sorry. Anastasia,
I think just to maybe, just to go back to what Yann told before. Well, the background, it was really about not that much about darkness. It was more about focusing on the person and really not looking at all. And, as Yann, you were telling, like when you see, like with me now, a picture behind, some plants, something, you're always distracted, by what you are saying. And Yann always told me, like, I don't want people to be distracted by what's happening around. I want them to focus on the face of the person and on what she has to say. And I think the background really helped that, to focus on the story. And for the moments between the interviews, it wasn't that much about the colors. It was more about, okay, we see the stories, we hear the stories, and then we want to show women's lives, but not illustrating what they just said, but just showing the same stories in a different way. And so, for example, all of the moments where we see the women standing, looking into the camera without moving, and then you can see, some background and you have an idea of where they come from, etc. It was a way to say, okay, now we go, out of this very natural background and we show who these women are, where they live and how they live, but in an artistic way, because for us, it was also very important to kind of remain also artistically powerful and not just a documentary that, illustrates the story that you just heard. It was more of a general kind of feeling we wanted to create between the image and the story.
Yeah.
And sorry, 2 minutes. And also I'm a photographer, and on this film you can see every woman are beautiful. The light was important, it was important to make this woman the more beautiful you can. And also I'm working with the background, this canvas for like 30 years, on my photography, on my portrait. And also, I think for the subtitle, it was very important to have the subtitle on the same height of the eyes, and subtitle become very, very important. Sometimes the subtitle will be in distraction with the country, the paysage around. So this is why it's very important. It's something I love to work. It's our patch, comme on dit en anglais, my way to work. And I'm completely close inside this. And it's very important, difficult for me to get out of this. When we're trying something different, we try to shoot the woman without the canvas, but it was not working. So we decided to continue like that.
Great. And unfortunately, we are running out of time, but real quick, what is your upcoming project, Yann? What's all of that about?
The first project is coming out. Perhaps I've done a movie named Home, with a movie about ecology 10 years ago, and doing the next one, Legacy, is my legacy. In fact, it went all the thing I learned. I'm an ecologist for the last 50 years. So what I have seen is amazing. What's happened now, and there's a movie about that. And also we're trying we're finishing a movie named France, une histoire d'amour. France, a story of love. So it's a story about how France is a nice country to live, and I think the French have forgotten a little bit about that. And the next project. Voilà.
Great. And what's next for you, Anastasia?
Well, to be honest, I did a very, very important personal project this year, which is called a baby. So I have a baby who's less than 2 months old. So to be honest, I'm focusing quite a lot on this project right now. And then for the next year, I'm also writing, and I want to pursue some of the things about women, and because this project is so important, but at the same time, because we talked about so many different topics, we were not always able to go in depth on some of them, and that's what I would like to do next.
Wonderful. We
So
can't wait to
exciting.
see what the both of you come up with, and we can't wait to watch your film in January, I believe.
Yeah, and the next story that you all would film for us. So thank you very much to both Anastasia and Yann for connecting with us all the way from Paris and France in your time zones, and for Rhea as well for coming out on a Sunday night. And I hope our audience today is having a great evening at home as well, watching us online. Just a few kind of quick administrative questions regarding the Hong Kong French Film Festival. The online streaming of the film will be extended until December 20th, and the films in cinema will be rescheduled in January. So sit tight, we'll be back and ready for you when things settle down. Thank you once more to our three guests today, and have a great day in Paris and a great evening, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.